Hi everybody. Today I am going to talk about Shakespeare, tragedies and historical dramas. So the theme is Uilyam Shekspir tragedies and historical dramas. At first, let's talk a little about the birth of Uilyam Shekspir. Uilyam Shekspir was born on April 23rd, 1564 in Stratford-avonda. He was baptized on April 26th. And about his family. Uilyam was the third child and first son of Jon and Meri Shekspir. Uilyam's father, Jon Shekspir, was a vitover, that is, a maker of leather goods, such as purses, belts, and gloves. Jon was also a prominent man in Stratford. By 1560, he was one of 14 members of town council. And here is information about the education of Uilyam Shekspir, where he studied. Uilyam Shekspir attended the Stratford King Grammar School. In this school, pupils learned basic reading and writing. Uilyam Shekspir, except reading and writing, learned several languages such as Latin and Greek languages. Comedies. A comedy can be recognized by its name. It is named for the situation of the plays of Uilyam Shekspir. Some of Uilyam Shekspir's popular comedies are the following: A Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, and Much Ado About Nothing. And now, tragedies. What is tragedy? How can it be identified? A tragedy can be identified because plays are named for the main characters. Some of popular tragedies by Uilyam Shekspir are Macbeth, King Lear, Hamlet, Othello, and Romeo and Juliet. Histories. A history can be identified by the name as well. They are named after British kings. The more famous ones are the following: Henry V, Henry VIII, and Richard III. As you see, the histories are called by the names of the kings in the history. And at last, a little about the death of Uilyam Shekspir. Records reveal that Shakespeare revised his will a month before he died on April 23rd in 1616. And he is still buried at the Holy Trinity Church in Stratford. There is very interesting information about the death of Uilyam Shekspir. As historians say, Uilyam Shekspir died on the same day of his birthday, that is, April 23rd. People from all social and educational classes enjoyed Shakespeare's work because Shakespeare understood human nature. His stories were about situations and emotions that most people could understand. Feelings such as love, hate, jealousy, and grief. Like real people, most of Shakespeare's characters were neither entirely good nor entirely bad. Shakespeare's plays are still popular today throughout the world. Many of his plays have been also made into movies, such as A Midsummer Night's Dream, Romeo and Juliet, and Hamlet. And there are also different versions of those films. Shakespeare's influence is also evident in many of the English words we use every day. Scholars estimate that Shakespeare made up about 1,500 words, including advertising, alligator, bedroom, lonely, watchdog, and zany. Obviously, Shakespeare loved words, and he knew many of them. While the average American today has a vocabulary of about 10,000 words, Shakespeare had a vocabulary of more than 29,000 words. And now let's talk about the chronicles of Uilyam Shekspir. Scientists divide works of Uilyam Shekspir into chronicles, and chronicles of Uilyam Shekspir are divided into 4 periods. So each period includes works of Uilyam Shekspir. So what works, tragedies, historical dramas, and comedies are included in those periods? Let's see them in details. Period 1. Period 1 includes the following works. They are Henry VI, Part 2, Henry VI, Part 3, and Henry VI, Part 1. And the next is Richard III and the Comedy of Errors, Titus Andronicus, The Taming of the Shrew, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, Law's Labour's Lost, and among them the most famous one is Romeo and Juliet. So the next is period 2. To this period we can give as an example the following works by Uilyam Shekspir: Richard II, Midsummer Night's Dream, King John, The Merchant of Venice, and Henry IV, Part 1, and Henry IV, Part 2. Much Ado About Nothing, and Henry V. And now period 3. Period 3 is more famous period of Uilyam Shekspir than the others. Why? Because the most famous tragedies by Uilyam Shekspir were written in this period. So let's look at the list of those famous works in this period. There are Julius Caesar, As You Like It. The next is Twelfth Night, Hamlet, The Merry Wives of Windsor, Troilus and Cressida, All Is Well That Ends Well, Measure for Measure, Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, Antony and Cleopatra, Coriolanus, Timon of Athens. As you see, for prominent tragedies of Uilyam Shekspir, such as Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Hamlet, were written in this period. That's why this period is considered more famous periods among the others. And the next period, period 4, and this is the last period of Uilyam Shekspir chronicles. The works in this period are the following: Pericles, Prince of Tyre, Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, The Tempest, Henry VIII, The Two Noble Kingsmen, and that's all. So let's talk about the 4 major tragedies of Uilyam Shekspir now. We are going to talk about Romeo and Juliet, Othello, King Lear, and Hamlet now. Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet. This work of Uilyam Shekspir is very famous and unique work. Why? Because Uilyam Shekspir mixed two genres in this work, that is comedy and tragedy. Let's talk about the main characters in Romeo and Juliet at first. They are Romeo. He is a teenage son of the Montague family. Juliet, Capulet. She is 14-year-old daughter of Capulet's family. She falls in love with Romeo, the son of her family's enemy. Friar Lawrence. Friar Lawrence is a Franciscan friar and a mentor to Romeo and Juliet. The next is Nurse. Nurse is a loyal companion to Juliet, having cared for her since she was a baby. Mercutio. Mercutio is a relative of the Prince of Verona and a close friend to Romeo. The next character is Tybalt. Tybalt is a nephew of Lady Capulet and Juliet's cousin. So let's talk about review of Romeo and Juliet. What about this tragedy? Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy based on Romeo and Juliet, a poem by the English author Arthur Brooke. It was first published in 1597 and first performed in 1596. Romeo and Juliet is a story of love and hate. It deals with two teenage lovers in Verona, Italy, who are caught in a bitter feud between their families, the Montagues and the Capulets. It is a story of two young people who fall in love at first sight, marry secretly because their families are bitter enemies, and die because each cannot bear to live without the other. It is also a story of two families whose hatred for each other drives a son and a daughter to destruction. After they have lost their children, the parents learn the folly or hatred and agree to end their feud. Love eventually conquers hate, but at a terrible cost. That's why we can say the ending of Romeo and Juliet is both bad and good. Both sides is main characters. Best, good side is befriending of two families, enemy families. Romeo and Juliet is not a simple story of good and bad people. For all the major characters be some responsibility for the disaster. Romeo and Juliet have little chance to preserve both their love and their lives in the hatred that surrounds them. They are driven to destruction by events they can't control. Yet the final choice is theirs, and they choose to die together instead of living apart. Shakespeare sets the scene of Romeo and Juliet in Verona, Italy, as earlier tellers of the story had done. The time of action is vague, also it clearly takes place at some time before Shakespeare's days. The tragedy blames the adults for their blind self-interest. And now let's talk about the tragedy Hamlet. The main characters in Hamlet at first. Hamlet, the Prince of Denmark, the title character and the protagonist. Claudius, the King of Denmark, Hamlet's uncle, and the play's antagonist. The next character is Gertrude, the Queen of Denmark, Hamlet's mother, recently married to Claudius. Here is a character, Polonius, the Lord Chamberlain of Claudius' court. The next character is Ophelia, Polonius' daughter, a beautiful young woman with whom Hamlet has been in love. The next is Laertes, Polonius' son and Ophelia's brother. So what about his tragedy Hamlet? Hamlet is one of Shakespeare's greatest creations, but it is also considered the hardest of his works to understand. Some critics count it even mysterious. The source of the plot can be found in a Danish chronicle written around 1200. The plot of the tragedy is following. A usurper Claudius murders his brother, the lawful king, and seizes the throne. The son of the murdered king and lawful heir to the throne, Hamlet, discovering the crime, struggles against usurper. But the struggle ends tragically for him too. As you see, there is nothing mysterious in the plot of the tragedy, but mysterious is the complex character of Hamlet himself. First, we see Hamlet plunged into despair. He is grieved by the death of his father, shocked and horrified by the inconstancy and immortality of his mother, filled with disgust and hatred for Claudius, and begins to be disgusted with life in general. Later, after talking to the ghost, he learns of the murder of his father. He sincerely wants to kill Claudius and avenge for his father. The readers also want him to do so, but Hamlet delays and goes on delaying. He even rejects the chance to kill Claudius while he is on his knees in prayer. Why does he delay avenging his father's murder? Why can't he make up his mind? This is a mystery. Various explanations have been offered by a number of critics, but still they haven't come to a conclusion which could satisfy all the readers and investigators of Shakespeare. Instead of Claudius, Hamlet, by mistake, kills Polonius, his Ophelia's father. It happens because Polonius, the king's advisor, decides to eavesdrop on Hamlet while the prince is visiting his mother in her sitting room. He hides behind a curtain, but Hamlet becomes aware that someone is there. Hamlet stabs Polonius through the curtain and kills him. And then the king Claudius exiles Hamlet to England for the murder. He also sends secret orders that the prince be executed after he arrives in England. But Hamlet intercepts the orders and returns to Denmark safe and sound. He arrives in time and sees Ophelia's burial. Ophelia is a daughter of Polonius and the girl whom Hamlet loves. She goes insane after her father's death and drowns himself. Laertes, Ophelia's brother, blames Hamlet for his sister's and father's death. He agrees to Claudius' plan to kill Hamlet with a poisoned sword and a fencing match. Laertes wounds Hamlet during the duel and is wounded by himself by the poisoned weapon. Hamlet's mother, watching the match, accidentally drinks from a cup of poisoned wine prepared by Claudius for Hamlet. Dying from the wound, Hamlet kills Claudius. At the end of the play, Hamlet, his mother, Claudius, and Laertes all die. So the role of Hamlet in this outstanding play is considered one of the greatest acting challenges of the theater. Shakespeare focused the play on deep conflict within thoughtful and idealistic Hamlet. Hamlet reveals this conflict in several famous monologues. The best known of them is his monologue on suicide, which begins with "to be or not to be." This is a very famous monologue used by the main character in Hamlet, the Hamlet itself. To be or not to be, that is the question. So, and now let's talk about the tragedy of Uilyam Shekspir, Othello. And now let's give a list of the main characters in Othello. Othello, the play's protagonist and hero, a Christian Moor and general of the armies of Venice. Desdemona, the daughter of Venetian senator Brabantio. Iago, Othello's ensign and the villain of the play. The next character is Cassio. He's Othello's lieutenant. Cassio is a young and inexperienced soldier whose high position is much resented by Iago, antagonist. Emilia, she is Iago's wife and Desdemona's attendant. And here is character Roderigo, a jealous suitor of Desdemona. Bianca, a courtesan in Cyprus. And the next character, Brabantio. He is Desdemona's father, a somewhat blustering and self-important Venetian senator. Okay, the plot of Othello. Tragedy of Othello, or the Moor of Venice. So, Othello is a tragedy by Uilyam Shekspir, probably written in 1603. This story revolves around two characters, Othello and Iago. Othello is a Moorish general in the Venetian army charged with the generalship of Venice on the eve of war with the Ottoman Turks over the island of Cyprus. He has a wealthy Venetian. He has just married Desdemona, a beautiful and wealthy Venetian, much younger than himself, against the wish of her father. Iago is Othello's jealous and bitter ensign, who maliciously stokes his master's jealousy until the usually stoic Moor kills his beloved wife in a fit of blind rage. So the play begins in Venice. In the middle of the night, Iago and Roderigo are meeting to discuss their hatred of Othello. Iago hates Othello because he promoted Cassio to lieutenant over Iago, and Roderigo is a heartbroken, failed suitor of Desdemona's. They decide to wake up Senator Brabantio with news that his daughter Desdemona has a Venetian army and Moor secretly married Othello. Brabantio calls an emergency meeting of the Senate where Othello and Desdemona make a case for their mutual love and defy the objections of a marriage between a black and white woman. The Duke of Venice sides with Othello, who is then called to defend Venice from attacks of the Turkish fleet. The action of the play then moves to Cyprus, where we learn Othello has just deafened the entire Turkish fleet. Desdemona, Iago, and Emilia have just arrived in Cyprus as well. So their time doesn't last long, as Iago doesn't waste any time in acting his evil plan to convince Othello that Desdemona is disloyal and having an affair with Cassio, bringing about both of their downfalls. The more Othello trusts Iago, the more he distrusts Desdemona and Cassio. His jealousy begins to rule him. Othello reaches his breaking point after Iago tells him he has seen the handkerchief of Othello had given Desdemona, claiming that Desdemona had given Cassio the handkerchief as a token of her love. When Desdemona can't produce the handkerchief, Othello flies into a rage. After he leaves, Emilia suggests that Othello is jealous, but Desdemona brushes this off, swearing he has nothing to be jealous about. In actuality, Emilia has given Iago the handkerchief. To further seal Othello's fate, Iago plans a conversation with Cassio while Othello hides to listen. Instead of discussing Desdemona, as Othello believes, Iago asks Cassio about Bianca, the courtesan in love with him. Enraged by what he hears, Othello asks Iago to kill Cassio and leaves to meet his wife. Instead of killing Cassio himself, Iago tricks Roderigo into trying to kill Cassio, saying it is the only way Roderigo can win Desdemona's love. When both men are wounded, Iago enters and kills Roderigo to hide the truth. Then he pretends to mourn the death of his friend. Meanwhile, Othello meets Desdemona in their bedchamber. Also, Desdemona protests her innocence. Othello's jealousy has consumed him and he smothers his wife. Emilia enters to deliver news of Roderigo's death, raising the alarm once she sees murdered Desdemona. Realizing what has happened, Emilia denounces Iago and he stabs her and flees. Once Iago is brought back, the whole truth is revealed. Overwhelming by his own guilt at what he has done, Othello kills himself. Iago is arrested and taken away. The next tragedy is King Lear. So the main characters in King Lear. King Lear, an aging king of Britain and the protagonist of the play. Cordelia, Lear's youngest daughter. Goneril, Lear's oldest daughter and the wife of the Duke of Albany. Regan, Lear's middle daughter and the wife of the Duke of Cornwall. Gloucester, a nobleman loyal to King Lear. So what about is this tragedy? King Lear is a tragedy written by Uilyam Shekspir. It is based on the mythological Lear of Britain. King Lear relinquishes his power and land to two of his daughters. He becomes destitute and insane and proscribed crux of politician machinations. The first known performance of any version of Shakespeare's play was on St. Stephen's Day in 1606. What about is King Lear? King Lear, so there is a main character in King Lear, and it is the aging King Lear, King of Britain. In an attempt to avoid future strife, he divides his kingdom between his three daughters. His eldest two, Regan and Goneril, respond to his request for a show of love, but Cordelia is unable to, not wanting to be hypocritical. In a fit of rage, Lear banishes her and she leaves to marry the King of France. When his advisor Kent attempts to tell Lear he is doing wrong, he is too banished. The Earl of Gloucester's bastard son Edmund is planning to gain his brother Edgar's land by disinheriting him. He convinces Gloucester that Edgar is plotting against him, and then persuades his brother to flee from his father's anger. To avoid arrest, Edgar disguises himself as a mad beggar, poor Tom. Edmund is taken into Cornwall's service. Lear begins a series of visits to Goneril and Regan, followed by a disguised and loyal Kent. Kent insults Goneril's steward Oswald, until Lear takes him into his service. Goneril then quarrels with Lear, who leaves her castle to go to Regan's. Kent is sent ahead, but he quarrels again with Oswald and is put in the stocks by Regan, who supports her sister's attitude. These sisters meet together with Lear and tell him to dismiss some and then all of his followers. He leaves the castle in a rage, going out in a violent storm, accompanied by by his fool and Kent. Lear harangues the storm, then meets poor Tom, whom he treats as a counselor. Gloucester tells Edmund of his intention to help Lear and advises Kent to take Lear by Dover, where Cordelia and the French army are to be found. But Edmund has informed on Gloucester to Cornwall. And when Gloucester returns to the castle, he is accused of being a traitor. His eyes are put out and he is thrown out into the wilderness. In the melee, Cornwall is killed by a servant. Edgar encounters his blind father, and as poor Tom journeys him with to Dover, where Gloucester finds Lear. There is growing animosity between Albany and Goneril, who is showing increasing affection to Edmund, who also has a liaison with Regan. Oswald, taking a letter from Goneril to Edmund, encounters Gloucester. But before he can harm him, he is killed by Edgar. Lear is found by Cordelia's army and they are reconciled, but they are then taken prisoner by Edmund's soldiers, and Edmund orders them both to be killed. After the battle, Goneril and Regan both encounter Edmund and display their feeling for him. Albany challenges Edmund, and the disguised Edgar appears to fight him. Regan dies, poisoned by when her husband hears of her betrayal. Edmund is fatally wounded, and Edgar reveals himself. An order is sent to cancel Lear and Cordelia's execution, but it arrives too late to save Cordelia. Lear carries her in and soon after dies of a broken heart. Albany abdicates, leaving Kent and Edgar to rule the realm, but Kent announces that he has a journey to go on like his master. Edgar reflects on the future. This is the end of Tragedy King Lear. There is interesting information. When the tragedy of Uilyam Shekspir, Macbeth, is considered the shortest tragedy, the tragedy Hamlet is considered the longest, with more characters' deaths than the other four tragedies by Uilyam Shekspir. Shakespeare's historical plays, normally referred to as Shakespeare history plays, are the 10 plays that cover English history from the 12th to the 16th centuries, and the 1399 to 1485 period in particular. Each historical play is named after and focuses on the reigning monarch of the period. In chronological order of setting, Shakespeare's historical plays are King John, Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, Richard III, Henry VIII. Shakespeare's historical plays are enormously appealing. Not only do they give insight into the political processes of medieval and Renaissance politics, but they also offer a glimpse of life from the top to the very bottom of society. The royal court, the nobility, tavern life, brothels, beggars, everything. The greatest English actual and fictional hero, Henry V, and the most notorious fictional bonders, Falstaff, are seen in several scenes together. Not only that, but those scenes are among the most entertaining, profound, and memorable in the whole of English literature. That's some achievement. Shakespeare's historical dramas and their significance in British history, very huge. Shakespeare's history plays was a popular dramatic forum in London theatres. Shakespeare confirmed the fashion of the time and entered to the history play. He produced some history plays, 7 of which are based upon the history of England. Shakespeare's, though not the inventor, was the most prolific author of such historical dramas. In his history plays, Shakespeare deals with the lives of the kings between 1377 and 1485, such as King John, King Richard II, Henry IV, Henry V, Henry VI, Richard III, and Henry VIII. All of these history plays are based upon the 15th century England, with the exception of King John and Henry VIII, set respectively in the 12th century and in the first half of the 16th century. Shakespeare changed the actions and characters in his history plays, and he didn't write them in a chronological order. Also, he based his plays on real events in history. Of the English kings he dealt with, as mentioned above, Richard II, Henry IV, Henry VI, Richard III. Shakespeare began with Henry VI and continued with Richard III, Richard II, Henry IV, and Henry V. So this is information about life, creative works, histories, comedies, historical dramas of Uilyam Shekspir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. Bye.